All right. I think I'm live. It's Craig Meister, College Counseling Tonight. Welcome back. It's the 31st of January, 2026. I'm celebrating my 20th anniversary as your favorite college admissions coach. And I'm so happy that you're joining me. If you'd like to learn more about me and how you can work with me one-on-one throughout the entire college admissions process, go to my website, which is collegemeister.com. And if you're interested in learning about whether or not you are or your student is on track for selective college admission in the United States of America, visit areyouontracktogetin.com. Again, that's areyouontracktogetin.com, at which you will complete a free 3-minute assessment. Your results will be emailed to you right away, and they will help you clarify whether or not you are or your student is on track for selective college admission in the United States of America. There is a lot to talk about. We're entering the end of what I call sort of early action notification season. And that enters us into a period of dormancy and quiet in the world of college admissions, because that's when admissions officers start really putting their nose to the grindstone, as they say, and really read the regular decision applications. But there's still a handful of other early action notifications yet to come out. But really, the big flashpoint in the coming weeks will be early decision 2 notifications. And the big players in the early action space have now released their notifications. This is inclusive of everyone from Michigan to UNC to UVA, as well as Georgia Tech. And of course, earlier in the cycle, we had privates like Babson and also USC and others release their early action. So I want to talk first, and I'll take student questions by all means. If you want to ask student questions and parent questions, by all means, put them into the chat. But let's start talking about Janine Lalonde, who likes to go by Dean J. That's what she goes by. But her name is Janine Lalonde, and she works at University of Virginia, and she is a dog, and she's a blog, and she calls it Notes from Peabody. And I will thank her for sharing the statistics, because let's face it, the vast majority of colleges today are not even sharing statistics. So I got to give her props for sharing the statistics for the 25-26 early action admissions cycle over at University of Virginia. This is big news, by the way, because if you recall, I did a video on this in the beginning of the cycle. But if you recall, University of Virginia did away with its supplemental essay requirement on its supplement to the Common App for all first-year applicants except for nursing applicants for the 25-26 admissions cycle. And at the time, there was not much made of this in the mainstream press or anything. I mean, no one talks about any of this in the mainstream press other than to scare people about how selective colleges are. But even in the sort of the college admissions space, there wasn't really much talk about the decision by a very selective public university like UVA to completely remove any and all writing expectations on its supplement. I, however, did a video, and I posited at the time that it was a shrewd move on the part of UVA, and I made the argument that maybe it wasn't really Dean Jay's choice. Maybe it was from higher ups. Now, Virginia is an interesting case because it's a public university, and of course, there's been a regime change just now in Virginia. And one of the first moves by the new regime in Virginia was to cleanse the board, I think, at UVA of some Republican appointees. So, order has been restored in the minds of the powers that be at University of Virginia. And Dean Jay is, of course, part of the old regime, predating the last regime, and therefore more in line with the current regime. So, there's a lot of moving parts here. But what you need to understand is that writing is inhibitive of students completing a supplement. So this is the reason, of course, why Northeastern University, when they, for a few weeks in an admission cycle, I think it was the was it the 2017 emission cycle or the 2018 emission cycle? When for a few weeks in the 2017 or 28 emission cycle, 2017 or 2018 emission cycle, Northeastern University introduced just an optional essay. They saw their application numbers dip so much that they removed it mid-cycle, early cycle, frankly, embarrassingly. But of course, when I wrote about it, there were complaints made directly from Northeastern to me and threats made, and I will never forget that. You know who you were and are. But that's another story for another day. What I will say is that UVA pulled this number this year, but probably not fully under the decision of Dean Jay. I at least posited that in my video from a few months ago. My argument was that she probably wanted to keep reading the essays, but something caused her not to be able to. Some decision was made to get rid of the essays. And I maybe, incorrectly even argued at the time that the decision was made. And I don't know. I mean, obviously, I don't really know the answer. I was just positing hypotheses. But I made maybe the argument that, the essays were, of course, and of course, it is true that essays have been used as a way to assess students' lived experience and identities. And in a post-SFFA world, depending on who's looking at this, that could be deemed to be illegal now. And other people could look at it as completely being legal. So with a very volatile political situation in Virginia, I was not surprised when the decision was made to pull back from essays at all. But because just understanding the personalities involved and the fact that she even said she was sort of sad to see it go, I made the argument, I still make the argument that probably the prior regime wanted the essays removed. But I'm not certain that was the case. And there's a lot of upshot for Dean Jay and the powers that be in the admissions office over at UVA for the essays to be removed. Most notably, what I'm going to share with you in a second. See, I'm rambling. I'm building to something. Just know I'm building. I'm building. What I'm going to share with you are the statistics for early action at UVA. And they point to the fact that regardless of the real reason why the essay was removed, the ultimate outcome is beneficial to Dean Jay and her position and her status granting authority in her role. Because let's just cut right to it. Here are the statistics. The total number of early action applications that University of Virginia received for the 25-26 admission cycle, 57,495 for a public university in Virginia. 57,495. Last year, when University of Virginia still required supplementary writing beyond the Common App essay, so essay writing on its supplement to the Common App, University of Virginia only received 41,885 applications. University of Virginia received 17,000 more applications this cycle by removing its supplemental essay prompt. The total number of Virginia applicants to University of Virginia was 13,000 for early action, for 13,445 this cycle, whereas last cycle it was 11,240. So the bulk of the increase came from out of state. The total number of out-of-state applications for early action for University of Virginia for the 25-26 admission cycle, 44,050. That eclipses the number of total early action applications last cycle. And that's just the number of out-of-state applications for early action this cycle. Last cycle, it was 30,645. So an increase basically of 13,000. That's pretty impressive. And that shows you that obviously a lot of the serial appliers are out-of-state applicants. There wasn't nearly as much movement in the organic, authentic, in-state demand for University of Virginia. It's all coming from heavy hitting, status seeking, out of state applicants who don't want to put in the work and and who are attracted to not putting in the extra work and just pushing out another application. So let's pull back for a minute. The reason this matters to me, as I live and breathe this stuff, is because when one is composing or curating an entering class, now you have 16, 70,000 more applications with which to work and build the type of class you want to build. And now, with a new governor in Virginia and new regents or whatever they call it to the board, probably forthcoming, if not already appointed, Dean Jay has a little more wiggle room to do what she wants to do with the curation of the class of 2030, right? We're at the class of 2030 now. Yeah. And not having essays is the only thing better than using essays to discern one's identity, demographics, and backfill a class based off that and accept people based off that. Just go based off of nothing at all other than the Common App essay, which is the most identity-driven essay to begin with, of course. From start to finish, it's all about the applicant. It's not at all about why they want to study X, Y, or Z, or why they would be a good fit for UVA or any of that. It's all about the identity. So they can just refer to that one piece of writing anyway. So when Dean Jay said a few months ago, she was sort of sad to see it go. She'd always enjoyed creating the supplemental essay prompts. All that probably was true. But what it also was not sharing was what's also true, which is Dean Jay had just sort of struck gold, because by not having any supplemental essay to read, she was going to get a massive new number of applicants of all stripes, of all backgrounds, of all colors, of all sizes, of all states, and all countries. Greater diversity with which to work. And with greater numbers of apps, she could also reduce her acceptance rate, early action, by a massive amount, while also getting greater numbers of every demographic group to pull out of the sort of application pile and curate the class demographically that she wants to curate. That, of course, legally speaking, she's not allowed to curate based off of race, but she is, of course, able to curate it based off of any other number of factors that are still legal to consider. But she'll, considering race is also something that can be done in the minds of most admissions professionals, as long as it's considered from the perspective of racial experiences and not racial identity. That's sort of how they go to bed at night and make peace with what they're doing. They just, say that they're considering students' racial experiences when they accept students, not their racial identities. And that, in their mind, clears them of breaking the rules or breaking the law of the United States as declared by the Roberts Supreme Court. So what were the early action offers like based off of these new numbers of applicants? Well, the overall number of offers was 7,151. The total number of Virginia offers was 3,071. That's a 23% offer rate. They're calling it an offer rate. I mean, I don't quite exactly understand why they're calling it an offer rate. Virginia is a commonwealth, so I guess they just want to use different languages over there in the admissions office too. But this is an acceptance rate. So a 23% acceptance rate for Virginia applicants, early action. Out of state acceptance rate, 4,080 total offers out of the 44,000 who applied. That is a 9% acceptance rate. A 9% out-of-state acceptance rate, early action at UVA this cycle. Wow. And 8,480 deferred. So 14.7% of the 57,495 were deferred. So the vast majority, obviously, are just outright rejected and denied. So UVA's total application pool, ED, EA, and a regular decision is just under 83,000 this cycle. And Dean J, also known by her given name as Janine Lalonde, also wants you to know that she does not have any additional statistics to share. And she's heavily immersed in the regular decision review process, so she will not return your call. Decisions will be posted in the applicant portal as they were last night. I'm sorry, not last night. On the 30th, they were posted. And admitted students will also get a paper copy in the mail. So hold on for that. If you got accepted, congratulations if you got accepted. And, you should absolutely, if you were deferred, share that information with your parent and or counselor. If you'd like to be considered for regular decision review, you must complete the reply form in the portal by and upload your semester grades and any other updates when they become available to the portal. Our instructions at UVA are clear that updates are uploaded in your portal, not emailed to admissions officers. So the big takeaway is that more schools seeing these statistics and knowing that AI is writing so many essays right now, because both it's so easy for kids to do this and morality doesn't exist anymore, and because English is not being taught anymore, this perfect storm, I would assume that Dean J, Janine Lalonde might have inadvertently, purposely, accidentally, whatever you want to call it, struck gold. And I would not be surprised if a selective college or two or three or four for the 26-27 admission cycle also just completely waves the right flag and says, we're not going to even bother with this anymore. Right? Writing is passé. Yes, we're higher education, but do you really need to write to go to college? Do you really need to make a closing argument? No. Why? Why should we? Just mog, as they say. Put good face out there. Write a sob story in your 650-word Common App essay. That's enough. And we'll accept you to UVA. We'll reject 91% of out-of-state early action applicants. But if you tell a compelling enough sob story in your Common App essay, and you're applying from the right state or the right country, and have the right gender identity and or sexual orientation or God knows what, you are perfect for us. And that's really what gets you in these days to University of Virginia and many other. Please, I'm not picking on University of Virginia. This is how we roll in the world of higher education. I don't make the rules, my friend. I just report on the game. And I got to play the game because I'm a college admissions coach. By the way, if you're just joining us, my name is Craig Meister. I'm a college admissions coach. If you'd like to learn more about me and how you can work with me one-on-one throughout the entire college admissions process, you can go to my website, which is collegemeister.com. So here we go. Dean J has struck gold. And she realized you have to strike gold by becoming Northeastern. That is the way you strike gold, even as a public university in Virginia. Just become more like Northeastern. And as I joked a few weeks ago, just become more like Goucher College. Eventually, there will be no writing at all. Not even the Common App essay will stand the test of time. We will just fall into a situation where students will upload their TikTok video, and that will be how you get in. As long as you can give good face, as they say, in that 30 to 90 second TikTok video, you deserve apparently to get into UVA and really, let's be frank, Harvard, Yale, Princeton, them all. That is what matters. As long as you are attractive to the average admissions officer at these institutions, a 26-year-old English major who is now has a cat and works from home 3 days a week, you deserve to go to one of these colleges, apparently. And the world is your oyster. So that is the statistical information out of University of Virginia, Charlottesville. It has such a place in the American imagination over the last 10 years or so, right? Charlottesville. that's what's happening. I could do many videos about Charlottesville and, of course, the tours. As I've mentioned, the tour situation over at University of Virginia is nauseating to many. I've heard from many folks of the way in which they feel after the tour. And even the reform tour is quite nauseating these days at University of Virginia. Um, Look, this is the way the world is. This is just how it is. We just have to understand this is how it is today. Will it change for the better, for the worse? Well, depending on your perspective, it will. I don't even know how to predict what will happen next. Virginia, good luck. Virginia, good luck. Let's talk about Georgia Tech. So Georgia Tech is a whole different animal. Even though it's also a public university, it's in the state of Georgia. And Georgia is a state. It's not a commonwealth. Okay. So Georgia Tech is one of the few institutions that's sort of, has gotten better in some ways in recent years. Not just statistically, but, because so many other colleges are sort of deflating in all ways that matter. Georgia Tech, even if they're not getting better, they're at least not getting worse. So they look like they're getting better. So Georgia Tech, here's the news from Georgia Tech. I don't have as much in the way of statistics because they don't have like a comparable Dean Jay there. Like there's no one who really wanted to go into Hollywood who ended up being in charge of the admissions office at Georgia Tech. They just, who knows what they wanted to do, but they're not as desperate for FaceTime with the public over at Georgia Tech. So they're not as eager to give out, blogs and emotional Instagram videos, etc., as Dean Jay is. So here's the information we do have, though, from Georgia Tech, which, by the way, again, I respect everyone involved. Everyone's very different. Everyone's allowed, by the way, to have their own communication style. Everyone is allowed to do their own thing. I respect diversity. I celebrate diversity, and I want you all to know that. So just because they do things differently at Georgia Tech does not mean they're better or worse. They're just different. Georgia Tech also released its early action decisions this week, released decisions for 37,300 students in the early action 2 applicant pool. So these are the out-of-state kids. They have 2 different early action pools at Georgia Tech. One is for the in-state, one is for the out-of-state. Early action 2 is for out-of-state. Admission was offered to 3,149 of the early action applicants. Again, there were 37,300 early action 2 applicants over at Georgia Tech. Admitted students hail from 49 states outside of Georgia, 71 countries, and 1,825 high schools. The acceptance rate, this is going to kill Dean Jay, was around 8%. So much less fanfare, far less blogging, much less video emotiveness. But look at that. Georgia Tech still managed to get a lower acceptance rate for their out-of-states accepted students than UVA. Now, again, obviously, this is a acquired taste. Georgia Tech is not for everyone. Georgia Tech has a far slimmer menu of majors. But the majors that they do offer are a little bit more meat and potatoes type majors, whereas UVA has a greater diversity of majors of all different flavors. Early action 2 applications increased at Georgia Tech by 3% this year. They kept the same exact essay question, by the way. One of my favorite essay questions. Go watch the video I did on that this cycle again. I love their essay question over at Georgia Tech, their supplemental. It also represented the largest applicant pool group ever, accounting for 55% of the almost 68,000 total applications for first-year entry for fall 2026. So again, of the 68,000 total applicants, 37,300 applied early action 2, which is for the out-of-state cohort. Admitted students during this early action 2 phase joined the 2,640 Georgia students admitted early action 1 in December. Quote, As we admit this class of students, we thank our campus community for continuing to work to successfully recruit them to the Institute, said Mary Tipton Woolley, Executive Director of Undergraduate Admission. In the weeks and months ahead, I encourage you to join us in helping these students find their place at Tech. I should note that Georgia Tech does require the SAT or ACT. UVA is still test optional. And Georgia Tech had an acceptance rate of 8% in EA2 for out-of-state applicants, whereas for out-of-state applicants in EA at UVA, it was 9%. So that's the news I wanted to share. Some other statistics in terms of the Georgia Tech admitted students early action out-of-state round. 17% are intending to go into the sciences, 6% business, 5% liberal arts, 46% engineering, 5% design, and 21 computing. Here we go. 40% were female, 60% were male. And that's not just because Dean J is not the face of Georgia Tech. It's, of course, because the majors, the people attracted to the majors offered at Georgia Tech are majors that are more attractive on average to the male applicant. It doesn't make males better or females better. It just makes them different. On average, remember, this is average. There are going to be some amazing female Georgia Tech accepted students this cycle who are going to be far more impressive than some of the Georgia Tech male students. And that's awesome. So again, I want to make very clear, everything, it's just about average, bell curves, different things. But Georgia Tech, because it's a smaller number of majors and they're very STEM tech heavy majors, definitely is one of those unusual, highly selective American colleges these days that is actually male majority still. The vast majority of highly selective American colleges now are 50-50 or 60-40 female. But Georgia Tech is definitely not. I will also say that 25% of applicants were deferred early action to and will be reviewed again during regular decision. All early action applicants at both institutions, UVA and Georgia Tech, have until May 1st to make their admissions decision and deposit. All right. What does it say? Interesting about threats from Northwestern. Interested minds want to know about it. Northeastern. Oh, well, Northeastern, yeah. No, that's all in the past. I'm trying to look forward. As you grow older, you really don't want to dwell on the past. You just want to learn from it and move forward. But what I will say, it was nasty. It was nasty. It was dirty and it was vile. And it's not something that you should do. You shouldn't do. Now, that person, unfortunately, was rewarded. Eventually, I think, what happens, though, I truly believe this, and I think in that case as well, eventually, every dog has their day. Every dog does have their day. But you should not have done that. I mean, just reporting on the news, like they didn't even want it to meet the eyes of the masses. When I reported on the fact that Northeastern just deleted an essay that a lot of students had already completed, they just didn't want people to know about it. And that was apparently enough for threats to be made. You should never threaten people. That's not adults. I mean, maybe on a playground if you're 6 years old, but as adults, we should all act as adults. Don't you think? All right. It's an offer rate because they don't know who will say yes. So it's just an offer, right? Well, yes, that's why they're calling it an offer rate. But typically, every other college calls that an acceptance rate. So, they're willing to accept all of the people they've offered to. They're not going to rescind the offer if everyone says yes. But of course, they know statistically not everyone's going to say yes because it's EA. There's no binding nature to it. And a lot of the kids who were accepted are probably such all-stars academically, testing-wise, extracurricularly, that they're going to get a lot of other offers elsewhere. So, they can call it whatever they want to call it, but it's an acceptance rate. I mean, that's what I'm going to call it. Hey, Meister, there is a wonderful article in the New York Times right now about the use of ChatGPT. ChatGPT, isn't it ChatGPT? by the students. Check it out for your information. I will do that. I have not read that. I haven't read a newspaper in the last few days, but I will try to catch up on my newspaper reading shortly. Thank you for suggesting it. We got into UNC Chapel Hill, Mr. Meister. Thank you for all you did for us. Oh, well, that's kind. I don't know what I did for you, but I'm thankful that you thanked me, and I'm happy that any of the content I put out has helped you in some way, shape, or form. So I'm really happy to hear that. Congratulations are in order to you if you got into UNC Chapel Hill. That they did come out this week at UNC Chapel Hill as well. So congratulations to you as well. UNC Chapel Hill, again, I think is a school that is an amazing school as well, that a lot of kids are interested in, and rightly so. Georgia Tech is the third ranked engineering school after MIT and Stanford. We had a question a couple weeks ago about should I go to Georgia Tech or MIT? I still like MIT better, but Georgia Tech, as is indicated here, has really come up in the world in terms of student demand, parent demand, and Atlanta is a dynamic place. Nice weather. I'm freezing cold where I am right now. So the thought of being even just a few states south in Georgia feels like, that would be nice. I would be a little less cold. And yes, it's not so warm there right now either. But I have not been above freezing now for at least a week. And this is really painful. And it's like low into the single digits many mornings here where I am. So Georgia peaches sound really good right now. But again, Georgia Tech is great. And is Rick Clark still there? I always liked Rick Clark. Is he there? I think he is. Why did I think he left? No, I think he left. Didn't he leave? I think he left. No, yeah, he's gone, isn't he? Is he gone? I think he's gone. I think he couldn't do it anymore. I think is he there still? I think he's now just a speaker. I think he left. Clark named vice pro. Okay, so maybe he is. Hold on. Just breaking news. Clark named vice provost for enrollment management. Good. So he's like the big daddy now. He's moved up from just, he was there in the undergraduate space for a number. Now he's moved up. The current executive director for strategic student access will step into his new role as vice president for enrollment management. He did this literally last week. So congratulations to Rick Clark on your appointment. He has done a lot for Georgia Tech. Congratulations to you. SAT, ACT is required at Georgia Tech. Yes, full confession. I am a big fan of Georgia Tech. Good. I'm happy you're a big fan. Realizing my son may have made a big mistake by not applying to Georgia Tech. Competitive California-based student, computer science focused. Georgia was not on his radar, and I did not push it. Yeah, you did not push to open. You should have pushed, Mom or Dad. You should have pushed, because Georgia Tech is one of my favorite schools in the South. But also, I think the thing about California families, again, this is a stereotype. It's all about averages. This is not everyone. I know I shouldn't stereotype, but it's such a big state. It's like its own country, right? So I think it's hard psychologically to think outside of the California box for many California families, and for many families, especially families that are well tuned, happy families. Do you want your child to go all the way to Georgia? I can understand why you maybe didn't push it. So don't feel so bad. But yes, if you're going to go across to the east side of the United States, Georgia Tech, you could do far worse than Georgia Tech. Far worse than Georgia Tech. So Georgia Tech is an amazing option. And by the way, congratulations to my student. I have one student who got into Georgia Tech this week, and I don't know if she realizes how good it is that she got into Georgia Tech. She's gotten some good offers already. But I'm going to have to remind her about how proud I am, and also of her getting in. But also, now that I've read that statistic, I want to bring that statistic to her attention as well. 8% acceptance rate, early action for this out-of-state round for Georgia Tech. That's a Gus company. Like, that's not easy to do. So that's awesome. I thought there were less seniors in the U.S. this year due to financial crisis. Why so many more applicants? Are students simply applying to more schools? No. So again, in the case of University of Virginia, there are more applicants because they've reduced the stress of applying. They basically removed the essay writing requirement on the supplement. So when you lower the bar of admission, you're going to get more demand. Like, right now, if Oreo cookies are on sale at your local grocery store for $3.99. Not as many people are going to buy them at $3.99 as will buy them on sale at $1.99. That's basically what Dean Jay did by reducing the pain of applying, i.e., not requiring an extra essay or two on the supplement. Many, many more students came out of the woodwork and said, okay, I'll put in an application. No harm, no foul. They don't have to put any extra work in other than filling out a few extra questions about where, what program they're applying to, but those don't require much effort. So it takes 5 extra minutes, cost you 65, 85 more dollars to put out that application. And Dean Jay has 17,000 more applicants to review and consider and use to curate the class she wants to curate. So it's a win-win for everyone other than the student who wanted to make a compelling case in words and communicate fit. Arguably, the student that should be considered the most is the one that's hurt the most through a plan like this, but no one cares about that student in the current environment. They only care about revving up the numbers and creating the classes they want to create and appearing to be more selective with every passing year. So that's sort of the, all the incentives are pushing in that direction. They're not favoring the person who could write a very compelling, well-reasoned, persuasive 700-word essay about why they are a perfect fit for UVA and why UVA is a perfect fit for them. Dean Jay doesn't want to hear that. Dean Jay doesn't care. She doesn't care. That's why there are no essay requirements. But it's not just she doesn't care. She didn't, but potentially she did care, but they didn't want the paper trail to exist as to why they were really accepting applicants. I mean, there's all different reasons why they did it, but it's a boon to her. It's a boon to UVA. It'll be interesting to see what this entering class looks like, acts like, behaves like, achieves like, compared to previous classes. But one thing is for sure, I mean, UVA is definitely much, much more selective now, statistically, because they just, they got a huge, from out of state especially, they got a huge number, a pile of new applicants. So yeah, even if the birth rate is reducing in the United States, the other thing, though, you have to remember to the person who wrote that question is many more people are applying from out of the country as well. I mean, there's like whole countries worth of people applying from India, from China, from South Korea, from Europe even. I mean, from, higher education, a lot of things are going wrong in the world, but higher education is still a big industry in the United States, and still arguably higher education is considered to be higher quality in the United States than it is considered in most other countries around the world. So even if the American teenage population is dropping, the advent of technology and the ease of transporting people around the world, all of this augurs very positively for greater numbers of international applicants for the foreseeable future, as more and more people want to get their foot in the door in the United States to either work or live ultimately in the United States. And one of the ways to do that still that is approved of by the current administration in Washington, D.C. is through higher education. I think Trump has even said that, he wants the very best, and he wants the universities to get the very best, where it matter from where from. So he definitely wants to be open for business. He looks at higher education in the United States as a business. So he has not in any way really inhibited the demand from international applicants, as long as the international applicant is not, just protesting, his administration. If you can get over the fact that there is a Republican administration right now, I think there's greater demand than ever probably to come to the United States from an international location. And the vast majority of college applicants from abroad are not hyper politicized people. We hear about, of course, in the New York Times, the Washington Post, or other mainstream media outlets, oh my God, there's so many people internationally who are now turning their nose at coming to the United States for higher education. I think that's just propaganda. I think that's not true. I think the fact is, where is much, much better in terms of higher education? I don't think there's that many places with that many great higher education options other than the United States in that significant of numbers. I mean, obviously, there are a few good universities in Switzerland. There are a few good universities in England and the UK, and there are a few good universities in all those European countries, and there are a few good ones in Japan and China and all over. I mean, but not the massive numbers that you see of highly ranked institutions that you see in the United States. I mean, all the big names, not all, but most of the big names are the United States. So the United States is not in any way on the downslide as it relates to demand. And so I'm not surprised that UVA got these numbers, even with a lower number of teenagers in the United States. UT Austin had almost 100,000 applicants this year. They seem more popular than ever. Thoughts? No, I don't really have thoughts. I mean, I'm not a big booster of University of Texas Austin. I don't have anything against them, but for out-of-state applicants, it's a lot of rigmarole to go through, as I've said in previous videos, for the way in which there's this bifurcation of how students are considered in-state versus out-of-state. And there's so few slots available for out-of-state. You really, if you want to go to UT Austin from out-of-state, you are going into an environment that is highly Texan. Many out-of-state applicants who are looking for the status and looking for a high quality education, many do value diversity in lots of ways, including geographic diversity. So, but you do trade in that when you go to University of Texas at Austin, because they're all Texan, basically. I mean, it's all Texan. They, of the 10% that are not Texan or so, a good half are out international, and the other half are domestic, out of state. So there again, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. It's a public university. They should, if that's the mission of the university, to mainly educate Texans. There's nothing wrong with that. But similar to UF, similar to some of these other state schools that are highly dominated by the in-state population, and the fact that the top 5% rule with the UT, the public high schools in Texas. Now, again, yes, they're not guaranteed admission to the most selective programs, but it creates a student body that is somewhat, as I've said in other videos, it is not across the board as impressive as one would expect if you just hyper-focus on its out-of-state acceptance rate. I mean, that doesn't tell nearly the whole story when you think about who really is ultimately enrolling at UT Austin. But no, I'm not surprised UT Austin is more popular than ever, because Texas's population is growing. Texas is becoming a hub for technology. A lot of people see a lot of economic opportunities in Texas, and both domestic and international applicants are attracted to Texas for that reason. So no, I'm not surprised. I mean, I think Texas will continue to be a big force in the higher education space. But as I also have said in previous videos, there's actually more similar between UT Austin and UC Berkeley, University of California, Berkeley, than either institution would like to admit. I'll just leave it at that. Does Georgia Tech defer highly competitive students for yield protection? I don't know. I don't think they do. At the rate that some of these others do. I mean, I know that I have always looked at Georgia Tech as being a little more straight shooting institution, but I don't have any inside information to that one way or the other. What I know for sure is it's not like a UVA or I'm sorry, it's not like I think UVA is doing it now too, especially this cycle. But I mean, Michigan, for instance, historically has been very much yield protect oriented with its EA. And I mean, that makes sense because of the way in which particularly independent school kids were using Michigan very, very cynically for the last 15, 20 years as sort of fallback options when they didn't get into Yale or Princeton or Harvard restrictive early action. It was nice to be able to brag to your friends that, okay, at least I got into Michigan. And then Michigan stopped saying, started saying like no more to that. They don't want to even play around with that. Now, I mean, they'll still accept obviously some really high flyers, but they're much more careful at Michigan to yield protect. I don't think Georgia Tech does that as much. Now, of course, all of these institutions do it to some extent. I mean, every individual file is reviewed on a case-by-case basis. So I can't speak to a high degree of that happening. And therefore, because of its overall transparency and just because of my work with them in the past in terms of what I've seen my own applicants experience, I think they're much more, like I said, a straight shooter in terms of just accepting who they want to accept versus deferring or rejecting who they want to defer or reject. And they're not overcomplicating it over at Georgia Tech. I mean, I think it also helps for Georgia Tech to have the 2 rounds of EA, one for the public, one for the in-state kids, which I think is great. If the mission of the institution is to serve Georgia first and Georgians first, that makes sense. To give them sort of first dibs and then to do another round for the out-of-state applicants. Whereas, as we just talked about with University of Virginia, it's the same round, but they are reporting out statistically the difference in acceptance rate. And it is a big difference. I mean, as Dean Jay has indicated, as Janine Lalonde has indicated, it's a much easier chance of getting in if you're a Virginia resident. Early action, it's a 23% acceptance rate versus a 9% acceptance rate EA for out of state this cycle. So that's a big bifurcation. And she is right to say it's misleading to average out these offers together because residency is a major factor in our review. So if you're ever going to share the numbers, it's really important that you do share both rates. Don't just create some sort of average, because that's not going to accurately capture your chance of admission if you're from Arizona versus if you're from Fairfax County, Virginia. It's very different review. They have different standards, and that is something that no one is arguing. But sometimes kids look at averages and they don't really dissect as much what the rate would be for them. Why is Rice University not as well known in many parts of the country, despite it being an elite school? I don't think it's not as well known. I think it's a lot of status making organizations and populations look down their nose at Rice. Not fairly. I think it's horrible. But let's be honest. A lot of the style makers are in New York, Boston, and DC, and LA in the United States. The people who propagandize the overall population in terms of what is cool, what is hip, what is popular, what is nice, what is in vogue. And many of these people live in Beverly Hills, Santa Monica, the Upper East Side, the Upper West Side, Georgetown, Bethesda, and Boston. And many of these people politically and philosophically don't like Texas. That's it. Basically comes down to that. If you talk to honest, neutral parties who don't have a political dog in any fight as it relates to ranking colleges, all of those straight shooters will tell you that Rice is an amazing institution. But because New York Times editorial writers and opinion makers, are highly left of center and, chafe at the idea of being in Texas, that is the main reason why Rice doesn't get as much attraction. But I don't care about what people think from a political perspective. I just look at institutions and the quality of their programming, the quality of their professors, the quality of the quality of the students they accept, and the quality of the outcomes for the students. And Rice is always right at the top of the list. So I also want to just make very clear, Rice is not a conservative institution. I mean, neither is UT Austin. They're all liberal institutions, which again is so interesting and ironic. But again, a lot of what we've heard in the last few years from style makers. Is that the right word? No, it's like, the people who pick, like the people, like imagine like Anna Wintour over at Vogue. These are the people who say what is cool, what is hip, what is pretty, what is in vogue this season. These people will never come around to the idea that they want to send their daughters or their sons to Texas. Many college admissions officers and many college counselors based in high schools, I know this because I'm on the same group chats and forums as them, over the last few years have been up in arms about the idea of sending their own daughters to a state where birth control may not be available. And, after the Roe versus Wade decision by the Supreme Court and so on and so forth. Again, I'm not taking a position on this. I'm just stating the facts. I mean, so many college counselors were up in arms about that. How is it going to affect my practice? How is it going to affect what colleges I recommend? Many of them were asking these questions on these forums. So these two are part and parcel of sort of the infrastructure of people advising students and parent and families through the process. So you can imagine with sort of that perspective of so many people who impact the decisions of students and parents as they navigate the college admissions process, it's not surprising that any institution in a state that is moderate or right of center would not be as heavily promoted as an equivalent version of that institution in a state deemed to be more friendly to far left sensibilities, is what I would say. Was that a very long answer to your question? But that's the only real answer. Rice is an amazing, it's a beautiful institution. Houston is an amazing dynamic city. I mean, it's not everyone's cup of tea. I think it's quite spread out and soulless, frankly, Houston. But what I will say is that as an institution, Rice is really nice. There's a lot of camaraderie there. I really like the way in which you stay with the same house, if you will. And I like the size. You know, everything is so big in Texas. It's one of the it's like nice to have like a small intimate institution in Texas with really amazing resources. I like Rice. I like Rice a lot. I don't love its supplement. Like I don't love the whole box thing. I don't love that. It is one of the harder supplements, but I like it that it's so hard in the sense. I mean, I don't love it because like I feel bad for the kids that have to do it because it's a lot of hoops to jump through. But what I do like about it is, you know, I think you have to really be in it to win. Like you have to want Rice to complete that supplement. And I wish more colleges had the confidence to require kids to actually go through the motions on their supplement. Rice is sort of is the antithesis at this point to UVA because UVA, like Case Western, like Northeastern, that's like no supplemental work at all. Whereas Rice actually is requiring you to work still, and like I think they still have the 500-word essay. Even you know Penn and Harvard and all these other schools, their supplemental writing is so short. It's pathetic. Whereas Rice still has like a number of actual questions that you have to think about and like write an actual essay for. So I give props to Rice. I think I like Rice. Hold strong, Rice. Now that I've said that, watch the coming admission cycle. Rice will have no supplemental essays. I don't have to backtrack, but hopefully they keep the box and keep everything else that they got going on their supplement and keep requiring kids to try to write. What is your ranking of Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Swarthmore, MIT? Is that what you're asking, Souls? I don't. That's what type of question is that? I don't know. I mean, it all depends on what you want to major in. They're all so different. Obviously, for tech, I think MIT is the best. But for liberal arts, I mean, I think Yale is amazing, and I mean, all of them are. Other than MIT, I mean, MIT is much better, obviously, more you know, hard sciency and you know, tactile and you know, it's less touchy-feely liberal artsy, you know, obviously. Why don't universities share their acceptance rate and academic averages of specific colleges such as engineering? Well, some do, and obviously the publics do a better job of that. But you know, the main reason colleges aren't publishing many statistics these days is because they're under duress. If they share the statistics, they give away the game, and they don't want to give away the game. They don't want to give. They want to keep this process Byzantine and complex and gray because the more misinformation and lack of information there is, the more power they hold. So I think it's a shame. I'm all about sunlight being the best disinfectant. I wish more colleges would report out acceptance rates right down to the major if they do have differences in major. I mean, there are some institutions that are small enough they don't have differences in acceptance rate based off of major or even school. But you know, once you get to typical research institutions, both public and private, they will have different acceptance rates for different schools within that institution and even different majors. And many of the publics do report that out. I mean, I think Purdue, Illinois, Georgia Tech. I mean, I think they do. Colorado. I think I read out Purdue a couple weeks ago, right? Like they do a really amazing job at a lot of institutions sharing the acceptance rate. And again, I think the publics do it best. But these private schools, no. I mean, like they don't want to do it for a lot of different reasons. They don't want to do it. Again, a lot of it comes back to politics. A lot of it comes back to covering for accepting, legacies and other people for the wrong reasons. And because the numbers aren't large enough, some questions could start to be asked about what really are your institutional priorities. And so they get away with it. They get away with it. Yes, I guess you finally caught me live. Thank you for finally catching me live. As a second semester senior, what should I now spend my time doing? Well, don't go into a senior slump. That's for sure. So far, I've just been keeping up with my extracurriculars and dealing with interviews. Well, good for you. No, I mean, I would just say don't go into a senior slump. If you are still on the edge, obviously get your grades up as high as possible. Occasionally, your school will send an optional report out of third quarter grades, and that might matter a lot if you're put on a wait list somewhere. But otherwise, just hang tight. Don't do anything risky. Don't go on a bender or anything. Try to continue to finish strong, but you don't have to push as hard as you were pushing junior year and first semester of 12th grade year, unless again you're in that unfortunate position where you feel like you really got to run through the finish line because you may be fighting for a place off the wait list somewhere in the coming weeks. But good luck. Thank you for catching me live. I'm just going through some of these other questions if I missed any. I thought there were less. See, we did that one. All right. Let me see here. A lot of questions tonight. I guess like a lot of people are up. For computer science, MIT is on par with Stanford based on various rankings, but congratulations on landing at Stanford. Yeah, if anyone got into Stanford, congratulations. That's great. I'm currently deferred for engineering in Purdue. I know it's not a good situation, but I'd like to know my odds as an international student and if I should include grade deflation my school does in a letter of continuing interest. Well, you always can explain that, but I would hope that your high school profile explains that. So it might read like a dog ate my homework type excuse if that's brought up in too great of an extent in your letter of continued interest. Again, I think the thing that's most compelling in a letter of continued interest is stating definitively that I will attend if accepted, but don't say it if it's a lie. But say it if it's true. I think that's very compelling to say. The fact that you're international, I mean, that again, I don't know where you're applying from, but with visa issues and fraud in different countries, that could play a small role in it. But yeah, it's not a good sign. I mean, anytime you're deferred ever, it's not a great sign, obviously. But for engineering at Purdue, it's not the most competitive either. I mean, it's not the least competitive by any means, but it's also not the most competitive. So that doesn't really bode well for any other more competitive school regular for engineering. So I hope you have at least a couple other options because it might not pan out for you. And therefore, you got to go to plan B or plan C. All right. Additionally, I have a 3.92 unweighted GPA, 4.7 weighted, and 1540 SAT. Well, good for you. However, I received a B and B plus in my freshman year, along with a C plus in first semester of sophomore year in math. Does this make me an academic risk? Well, it doesn't make you an academic risk, but if you are currently a high school senior and you've already put out your applications, don't think for a minute that's not going to show up there. If that shows up on your official transcript, that can't help you because a lot of kids applying with straight A's will be competing against you. But it's better to get the weakest grades in 9th grade year and 10th grade year as opposed to 11th grade year and early 12th grade year. That's for sure. Is Michigan worth $90,000 a year? As I've said in previous tape videos, I don't know if I would argue any of these colleges are worth $90,000 a year. I really don't. I mean, especially if times are tough in your family and you have no money and you're going to go into debt. I don't know if any of them are worth it. I really don't. I mean, I really don't. Now, with that said, Ross is awesome. So if you got into Ross, congratulations. And if you have the money liquid, Ross, you could definitely do far worse than Ross, let me tell you. So, I mean, education in the United States is not as much education anymore, right? I've talked about this. I've intimated this on multiple videos. Much of this, I feel like I'm like a Gucci bag salesman at this point, more than a college admissions coach. this is a status chasing experience for many people. I'm like very realistic about this. Um, but Ross, I think, is a good program. Ross is more competitive than ever. So if you got into Ross, that there's a lot of status associated with that. So not only is there, I think, a good education associated with that, and amazing on-campus resources associated with that in terms of on-campus recruitment and job opportunities associated with that, which is obviously really important. But if you care about status, people in the world of business know Ross. So again, all that when you ask a question like is Michigan worth $90,000 a year? Well, compared to what? Starting your own business. Maybe you're a good enough business person, you could start your own business and you could be clearing 90K a year after 1 year. Yeah. Is Ross worth it then? Probably, maybe not. I don't think Ross is worth it at all at that point if you're already clearing 90K on your own business. But if it's a difference between going to Michigan Ross for 90K a year or going to Skidmore on a big scholarship for 25,000 a year, but you really want to study business and Skidmore doesn't really have a full-fledged business program in any way comparable to Ross, then yes, I would choose Ross in Michigan. So it all depends on like, what is the alternative that will determine whether or not I think it's worth it for you. And obviously this is a YouTube live, so you probably can't share your whole life story. So I can't probably really give you the most focused answer. But what I would say is maybe you want to meet me for a strategy session or a work session. I offer things called first sessions, which are 60 minutes, strategy sessions, which are 30 minutes, and work sessions, which are 90 minutes. And depending on how much time you think you need with me, you should sign up for one of those. And obviously there's a cost associated, but you can share with me the questions you want to ask, and I can give you the most bespoke, comprehensive answers for your unique situation. But it's hard to do that on a YouTube live because, again, I don't know really what the alternative is for you. But if you got into the University of Michigan Ross, congratulations. That is an accomplishment. Can I still submit additional awards in the first week of March for my regular decision colleges? Yes, in many cases you can. I can't promise they'll look at them, but many of the admissions portals give you the opportunity to share updates. And if they don't, oftentimes they will share with you an email address. Not all, but some of them will, unlike UVA, which does not want to get emails from you. Many colleges will have a general admissions inbox where you could send email updates and say, please add this to my application file. So if you have late breaking news in terms of awards or honors or accomplishments that you want to share that did not make the cut by the regular decision deadline, you often can share that information either on the portal or in an email to either your regional admissions officer or the generic undergraduate admissions inbox. I'm sorry I'm not making eye contact as much. I'm just reading all these comments. So that's where my eyes are. My daughter was accepted to Brown, but deferred from Case Western because of yield protection, or so you think. Yeah, probably. Laugh out loud. Why do schools care so much about yield? Okay, well, that's a fair question. They care so much about yield because traditionally many rankings lists are built on judging colleges based off of their yield. And the ones who have the highest yield get higher marks in the rankings. That's why. That's why. It looks like those colleges are more in demand when more of the people accepted matriculate. So that makes sense, So, but congratulations to your daughter getting accepted to Brown. That is a very mean feat. So that is great. Good for you. Good for her. And Case Western, again, I don't traditionally put them in the bundle of colleges that are hyper yield protective, but Case Western also doesn't give nearly as much of a bounce for EA or ED as you would expect. I mean, part of that is because they have to be somewhat more conservative at Case because, again, they're getting a huge number of applicants from kids who do not have to write anything more because like Northeastern, like now UVA, there's no supplemental writing. So they are getting a lot of non-serious applicants. Let's just put it that way. So if they in any way smell off of your application that you are just using them as a fallback, they have every right to put up the hand to you and say, we're going to pass because we have every thought that you're probably going to go to an Ivy League school and have no serious intention of going to us, but you're just using us in the case your first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth choice school do not pan out. And unfortunately, a lot of kids 17th, 18th, and 19th choice school, because so many kids are now running up the numbers and applying to 20 schools on the Common App. And they're using one space for like a case, or what they deem to be a safety. But again, as you see, it's not always a safety. It's not always a safety. You would probably have thought, oh my gosh, my daughter can get into Brown. She'll obviously get into Case, but that's not always the case. Case Western is still selective enough, and they are able to, lick their finger and feel which way the wind is blowing. And if you're giving off the sense that you are not a serious applicant for some reason, and it might not just even be you, it could be your letter of recommendation. Guess what? It could be. If that letter of recommendation from the counselor or the teacher is so glowing and saying that Janie is just destined for greatness, and we always knew she would be the perfect fit for believe it or not, there's some admission counselors who are stupid, and they'll write something like, the top 20 university, or the best university a kid from our school has ever gone to, and then you're reading that at Case. I mean, Case can read between the lines. They probably realize this kid is going to have a lot of other options beyond Case, so they could definitely make a smart move by passing on your daughter. So yes, I mean, officially it's in the yield protection bucket, but it might not be a stupid decision on their part to yield protect, right? Because I'm assuming your daughter wants to go to Brown and is no longer thinking about Case. And had she gotten into Case, she would not think one more second about Case in most cases. Again, I mean, depending on the money situation and the award and such, maybe she would seriously consider Case. But many people are seduced so much by an Ivy League school that, once they get into Brown, if they got into Case at the same time, they're over Case. I have an interesting question. Why is the camera so close to your face? Is that an interesting question? No, I guess I'm increasingly farsighted. Is that what it is? So like I'm getting older. So if I keep it too far out, I can't read the comments. So I mean, you don't want to get too close. You don't want to see my pores, right? But I'm just the guy here sitting on a sofa in this room in the corner. I'm calling this the college counseling corner. See, I'm in the corner. I'm in the corner, as that song said. Like I said, the first week I did this on January 3rd. What is it? It's Robin, dancing on my own. I'm dancing on my own in the corner. That's what I'm doing. All right. So I'm sorry if I'm bothering you. Don't look at my face. Just look somewhere else while you surf the internet as you listen to me pontificate about college admissions. But that's all right. You're entitled to ask. I answered. I can't see. If I hold you out too much further, I cannot read the comments. That's why you're seeing my face so up close today. All right. UT Austin computer science in state, or University of Michigan computer science? Well, I mean, I'm assuming the cost is going to be much better for you at UT Austin, right? So both are really good programs. Both are going to give you good notoriety. I mean, they're good programs. I mean, it's sort of just a matter of how much of a check are you willing to write, and environmentally, does Michigan or Ann Arbor check some boxes for you that Austin does not? Do you want to get an experience living out of state for 4 years and just return to Texas for the rest of your life? Do you not ever want to be back in Texas? I mean, depending on your ultimate goals, Michigan might make more sense if you want to get the heck out of Texas and stay the heck out of Texas. UT Austin might make more sense if you want to stay in Texas forever. And Michigan might make more sense if you just want to break from Texas. But both are great. So you should be really proud of that. I mean, getting into both of those would be great. So if you got into both, congratulations. And as someone else wrote, if cost is a consideration, I'm assuming UT Austin is going to be a much better cost. Though, again, I will warn you with UT Austin, when I say again, I mentioned this in a previous video. Housing is tight right now in Austin. And they're having some housing issues. And Austin has grown so much so fast that, as I often say, it's not all ponies and rainbows out there in Austin anymore. There's some real challenges in Austin. And Austin is not like the rest of Texas. So just be aware of that. Even if you're from Texas, Austin is its own little culture, and it's always been a little weird and different, but it's gotten much more different in the last 5-10 years as many more people from out of state, California in particular, have moved in. So the culture is very dynamic. It's changing. So just because you're from Texas doesn't mean you're going to acculturate properly to UT Austin. So if you got into both, I strongly encourage you to visit both campuses, do the full grand tour information session. If you can go on an accepted students day, that would be great. Get the full vibe, because this is where you're going to be living for the next 4 years, and this is who you're going to be associated with the rest of your career and your life. So you definitely want to do your due diligence. I definitely recommend doing your due diligence, but both are great institutions. Then someone wrote, for sure, UT Austin, computer science paying private school tuition for out of state Michigan is wild. Yeah, I mean, that's tough to consider doing. I mean, all these private schools for public schools for out of state kids are tough in terms of cost. And someone else said, if cost is not a consideration, go to Michigan. I love how this is becoming very interactive. You guys don't even need me anymore. Just keep talk amongst yourselves. That's fine. That's fine. We're like all at a big buffet together. Like we're all talking. This is nice. I like how everyone's sharing information amongst yourselves. That's great. Thanks for your candid observations, Craig. My daughter has been accepted to Auburn, Baylor, Center, Gettysburg, Providence, Swanee, and Wofford. Size differences aside, your thoughts? Well, that's an interesting question. I mean, they're so different. They're so different. I mean, but I guess the one that's really doing its own thing out there is Auburn, right? In terms of all these accepted students. I mean, that's a whole different vibe. I mean, Baylor is sort of close to that, but all the others are so small and, intimate. And Gettysburg for many years attracted a lot of drinking. I mean, what is there to do in Gettysburg? And ask yourself that vis-a-vis every college you just got into or your daughter got into. Will she be happy there all 4 years? Will she get bored? Will there be enough to do on campus? Everyone's different. I mean, for some people, Gettysburg is absolutely the right speed and everything. But it's not like some of these other schools on your list are that happening either. And I mean, there's not so much going on at Wofford or Swanee. Providence, obviously, is a little bit more. So I mean, environment matters. I think for girls and guys both. I mean, like you want to feel like you have outlets to grow, not just as a student, but also as a person. And I always say you can always make a big school small. You can't make a small school big. So for a lot of people, that doesn't matter. But for other people, it's something to chew over, right? So again, it's very hard to not knowing you, what's right for you. I don't know your daughter as well as you do, but if she applied to all these schools, I'm assuming she sees something attractive in them to her in all cases. So Baylor obviously would be an interesting compromise because you get some of the big school vibes and spirit and opportunities, but it's not as big as a public state school like an Auburn and impersonal as that. But it's still got some really good resources that some of these smaller schools just don't have. So again, but it's a hard question. Look, I think you should be proud of her. That's great. She got a lot of good options there. But they're very different. So again, as I think I told someone else earlier with UT Austin or Michigan, this is in many ways, not many ways. Yeah. In many ways, I'm just, when you talk nonstop for over an hour, it's hard to be articulate. So I apologize. But this is college visit season. I mean, please don't scrimp on the visits. Would you marry someone without meeting them first? No. Similarly, you don't want to marry a college for 4 years without visiting it first. So I hope to that parent who asked that question, if you haven't visited all the schools that have accepted your daughter at this point, try to. Please try to. Again, I know that costs a lot of money to visit all these schools, but and this is where she's going to live for the next 4 years. This is where she's going to make hopefully lifelong friends, maybe find a future spouse. God knows what she's going to do there. So it's important to, I think, invest the time to see the dorms in person, look around the edges of campus, make sure she feels comfortable. What sounds good, talking amongst your friends in the comfort of your home, is very different than what actually feels good when you actually get there and actually see and smell the campus live. So there's nothing that beats visiting. I always say there's no such thing as a wasted college visit. So please do do use this winter and spring to visit so that once May 1st comes, you and she can go to bed on May 1st knowing you've really done your due diligence and you have picked the college that is the right fit for her, given your budget, given everything else in terms of her value system, your value system, her goals, your goals. And I wish you guys the best. And thank you for watching. Next question is Sun STS top 300. I don't even know what does that mean? Into Yale restrictive early action, but waiting on Harvard, Princeton, MIT, Stanford, Caltech. Which is best for elite STEM and a real social life? He wants balance. Oh, that's an interesting question. I mean, Caltech is tough, I think, for a social life. I mean, well, I should say it like this. It's not your typical social life, but it doesn't mean it's bad. It's an acquired taste, but many people at Caltech like the social life because it's their speed. But Caltech is small and it is socially it's socially awkward. And I don't mean it in a bad way. I mean, I think it's small and it's a very small number of majors there. It's a highly STEM environment. So if elite STEM is truly your priority, I do think MIT and Caltech have to be the top. But with the added addition of your inner comment of social life, I obviously give the edge to MIT. MIT is right in Cambridge. It's right across from Harvard. So, if you have any social skills, like you have a built-in greater diversity of social options right there. And of course, you're in Boston. I mean, BU, Tufts. I mean, you name it. I mean, the city is teeming with college students, both in the city and outside of the city. So it's a happening place. So Yale, which it sounds like your son got into, that's not as exciting of a place in terms of, it's just not, it's like Connecticut, like you have to go further and it's like a rundown part of Connecticut. I mean, but Yale is amazing, right? I mean, and obviously amazing minds, amazing professors, amazing school. But social life, if everything, all else being equal, if your son is already socially dynamic, adventurous, not a shut-in, I feel like if he gets into all of them, I think I would probably pick MIT because, you're right there with Harvard too. Obviously, a lot of people like the eating clubs over at Princeton. They like the social life there, but it's more suburban area. It's not so far from Philly or New York, but it's not right there. But if you really like social life, being in Boston is great. Great diversity of people your age, great opportunities, good economy still. A lot of research going on in the STEM fields. So I like MIT and Harvard both, but I think of all the ones you're mentioning, I like MIT, I think the best. If you had just said, like, what's the best for STEM? What's the best for an amazing STEM education, elite STEM? I would probably just say Caltech. Though obviously, I haven't been as much of a fan of Caltech in recent years when they went test blind or test free. And now they're back to requiring the test, which I am very happy with. And obviously the weather, especially right now, is so much nicer in Pasadena, California than it is in Boston or Cambridge. So, take that into account too if your child is like I am increasingly allergic to cold. But I really like MIT. I really do. I feel like MIT has acquitted itself really nicely during this very political tumult that we've been going through in recent years. It's not none of these institutions are perfect, but MIT held fast to standards longer and more consistently than any other institution, and they should be proud of that. And I hope that they continue to uphold some standards and lead the way in that way. So I would say if he ends up getting into all of them, I would pick MIT. From your very brief description of what you're prioritizing right now. But like I said to other people on this call, this is college visit season. Visit them. They're all great. I mean, many people would kill to be in your position to get into Yale and not to get, even if you get into nothing else. I mean, to get into Yale, you're going to have so many opportunities at your fingertips as a STEM focused individual. So even if you get into nowhere else at this point, you should be so proud. He should be so proud of himself. And you can find good social life at any of these schools. I mean, look, socializing is an important skill set to develop. And um, Yale, it's sort of built in. There's just not much to do off campus, at least with people your age group there. Whereas in Boston, I mean, you have the pick of the litter in terms of other institutions nearby. But in all these institutions, there will be challenges for your son to socialize, both that there are healthy challenges, challenges that will help him. It's not like the worst thing in the world also to be in a place like Caltech where it might be a little more work, okay, or maybe you have a smaller pool from which to pull to date or meet people because it's smaller, but it doesn't mean it's bad. It's just different. So, but they're all great schools. So I wish you guys the best in terms of where he gets into next. During the summer between senior year and the first year of college, is it worth attending any programs or internships? Um, well, when you say worth, like, what is worth it to who? To you? I mean, I hope you keep busy. I don't recommend just sleeping in all summer, but if you're really exhausted after 4 years of high school, maybe you wanna just rest, and that's okay. Like, maybe you need to lose weight, maybe you wanna gain some muscle, maybe you wanna work out, maybe you wanna eat healthier so you can get good habits for college. I don't know. So maybe you wanna focus on me time or you time. But a lot of people do like to get internships or, keep growing in a more academic or career-oriented way or make money so they can pay for things in college, so they get a job as a lifeguard or something, or, something a little bit more white collar, like, uh, analyst position or something at a bank or something, who knows? Um, so it's really up to you. But yeah, I always say make the most of your time. Don't just go missing. Don't just go drink at the beach for 3 months. Don't drink at all if you're that age because you're not allowed to officially. But don't like waste time. It's so sad to see so many kids vaping and doing pot because the normalization of these things in our society, it's just disgraceful. I just think it's so sad. Such great minds wasted. Um, do something productive for yourself. Keep growing, building something for yourself. Like I said, if it's just even if it's a private endeavor like eating healthier or working out more, use the summer before your senior year to get good habits or develop yourself so that you can spring into college in a manner that will propel you to greater success when you get there. All right. University of Maryland didn't give me a status update. Help. Oh, well, it's interesting. I am in Maryland. And now that you mentioned, did Maryland come out with their accepted student? Did they come out with their decisions for EA? I'm assuming they did. But are you saying you just didn't get it? And if that happened to you, I'm sorry that happened to you. It's interesting. I mean, I'm almost embarrassed to admit it. Did I have anyone apply to Maryland this year? I'm in Maryland. I don't think I had anyone apply to Maryland this year. That just shows you how few I don't have many Maryland clients this cycle. I don't have, increasingly I don't have many clients at all because I'm increasingly taking fewer clients because I want to devote more time to fewer numbers of kids. So I take only so many now. When I started doing this, I mean, I was just starting my out 20 years ago, right? So if you wanted to work with me for half an hour, you were my client. If you wanted to work with me for 20 hours, you were I would take everyone. And I had much more energy 20 years ago, as you can imagine. So in my early cycles, I would say I had anywhere between in those first years, I was taking on in terms of numbers of seniors per year, and gosh, I at least 50. I don't know how I did it. I don't know how I did that. And there were a few cycles there. I mean, again, if you took everyone, the 50, I'm talking about 50 like as regulars. Now I didn't have the big packages then. I did more a la carte. It was all sort of a la carte by the hour back in the day when I started doing this. But they were regulars. Like I could do 50. Like that was basically a whole caseload that you would have in a private school setting. I would have as a private college admissions coach. But if you added on top of that, like the kids who just came once, I would have like 75 kids. I don't know how I did that. I don't know how I did it. As I've gotten older, I've gotten much more into quality over quantity, depth over breadth. I really want to offer that Cadillac experience, white glove experience to the people I work with. So I purposely take far fewer clients. So what I'm getting at here is, interestingly, this cycle, I sold out before I got anyone who wanted to apply to Maryland. So I'm assuming Maryland came out and you just don't get a status update. If you didn't get a status update, what would probably happen if they released all their EA decisions and you didn't get a status update, one of two things happened. Maryland is being notoriously incompetent, like Maryland sometimes is, or what more likely happened was some part of your application did not get in by November 1st, and they just moved you to the regular pool. And maybe you didn't realize it, but that could have been what happened. Thanks, Craig. Great advice. We've already started visiting. Okay, good. I think that was the father who whose daughter got into Auburn and Baylor and Swanee and other places. I mean, I love the architecture at Swanee, but Swanee is not for everyone. I mean, it's, it feels like Hogwarts and everything, and it's nice. And Wofford's nice too, but again, these are acquired tastes. All of them are. All of them are. So yes, I'm happy to hear you're visiting. Oh, this is very nice. Someone gave me money. That's nice. You gave me, this is so sweet of you. You have the best Oh, that's so nice. And yes, she is going to Brown and my older daughter goes to Rice. Oh, good. Good. I can now say that my two kids go to Brown Rice. That's so great. I like that. I like that a lot. Thank you very much for giving me your viewership. And also, that's very kind to, what is that? You're a super fan, I guess is what you are now. So thank you very much. It's very nice. But yeah, you should be very proud. Both amazing institutions. Again, for people who don't bring politics into everything, everyone like that, people who do not bring politics and everything, everyone knows that Rice and Brown are both amazing institutions. But for people who politics is their religion, unfortunately, some people do look down their nose at a school just because of where it's located. And I think that's very sad. I don't think that you should do that. I work with people of all different backgrounds and politics. I don't like people becoming so exclusionary. Is that the word exclusion? Why can't we all get along? Why can't we all get along no matter our political stripes? Can we agree to disagree? Unfortunately, a lot of the intolerance, I think, is coming from one side. I think that we need to just all strive for excellence together. We'll all get much further. All right. Someone's saying my vote is for Stanford. That's amazing. Congratulations. Is Villanova good for a degree in the sciences, particularly astrophysics? I know they say finance business. Is it financially worth it? Well, again, it all depends on, is it financially worth it compared to what? That's really the question I would ask. Villanova is well regarded. I think actually another mainline school I like better for astrophysics, I really like Swarthmore. And not a lot of people give these small schools credit for some of their departments. They think of them all as just liberal arts bastions. But some of them are better in the sciences, including Swarthmore, by the way. But Villanova's good. I mean, Villanova's nice. There's nothing wrong with Villanova. I think that it's a nice institution. But again, it's all depending on is it financially worth it compared to what? That's really the question you have to ask yourself, because at the end of the day, it's not the decision between should I go to Villanova or just stay in my bedroom. It's should I go to Villanova or somewhere else? So that's really the question. Thank you so much, Mr. Meister, for all your advice. I love listening to you. My son just got a request for UCLA supplement 2 essays. Is this a good or bad sign for admission? Well, again, that's a case-by-case thing. I mean, it's obviously not a bad sign if they want to get more information from you. So I wish him the best of luck as he completes that request in order to provide more information to the UCLA admissions review people over there. It can't be, I don't think it's a bad sign, but definitely make sure he dots his I's and crosses his T's on those 2 supplemental essays. Hi, thank you for your amazing videos and pre-read. Very helpful. Oh, were you a pre-reader? I offer something called my pre-read. I'm sold out though for this cycle. I couldn't do it anymore. I was exhausted. This has been a very exhausting 12-month period for me. So I do offer something called my pre-read. It's only $99 when I offer it. And basically what you do is you upload your Common App to my website. You pay $99, and within a few days, I come out with what looks like sort of like a blood test result, but for your application. And I mark it up. I say it's like what's like green, what's like healthy versus what's yellow, which is like borderline, and what's like red, which is like an emergency, and you got to work on that fast. So it's sort of like a blood test. I got the actual idea a few years ago when I had this very invasive blood test, and there were all these colors on it. And I was like, I got to do this for college applications. So that's why I created my pre-read. If you were someone who got a pre-read from me, I hope it helped you. I wanted to ask, which do you think is better, Michigan Ross or UNC Assured Business School? Both full price out of state, or Kelly with $40,000 off? Well, that's a really good question. I would say that it depends on what you want to do afterward. Like if you want to go into finance, I will say Kelly definitely punches above its weight as it relates to great on-campus recruitment for finance. I really do. I believe that strongly. But UNC and Ross are not slouches either, right? In this scenario, what you want to really concentrate on in terms of your business school experience, and then also what your immediate graduation goals are versus your long-term business goals are, would play a factor in how I would advise you. But also obviously matters what you want out of your 4-year experience. I mean, these are very different cultures. Bloomington, Ann Arbor, and Chapel Hill are very different places culturally, weather-wise, the type of kids who are attracted to these places, the type of professors who teach. I mean, they are different places. I mean, yes, so much in the United States is becoming the same. Like on every corner, McDonald's looks the same. Like there's no cultural identities or local dialects or local accents anymore. So in many ways, everything's becoming the same in the United States. And I think that's very sad, as all uniqueness, it disappears. But as it relates to these colleges, they are still different. I mean, they really are. If times are tough financially, I mean, there's nothing wrong with going to Indiana with that great scholarship. It sounds like you got a good, or whatever it is, need-based aid or scholarship. Congratulations on that. But if money is not an issue, I would do Ross. I would do Ross. Again, that's just me. But if weather is an issue, which it is right now for me, I'm freezing, I would do UNC Chapel Hill. They're all good. And also it sort of depends on where do you want to end up. Like if you see yourself ultimately wanting to live in North Carolina, you might as well get in on the ground floor now. If you know, Ross, I think, is traditionally the most receptive to out-of-state kids coming in and going out and going on to great things. And I think there's a great diversity of students at Ross. I think the overall student quality is highest at, well, I would say at Michigan, yeah, more so than North Carolina overall. I'm even talking beyond the business school. And obviously overall, Indiana is hit or miss. Like not all parts of Indiana are created equal in terms of the university. I mean, there are some very unselected parts of that institution. And then Kelly is sort of its like crown jewel, right? So if it's concerning to you to be at a school where some of the student population is sort of not at your level, and I know that sounds elitist and all, but if that's a concern for you, all of them are going to have some cadre of that because they're all public institutions and they all have to sort of have lower standards for in-state kids. But I think that it's a greater difference between the top of the top at Indiana and the bottom of the bottom at Indiana than you would find at either UNC or Michigan. And I think the smallest difference would be at Michigan. So for that reason, I would pick Ross. But again, that's just one man's opinion. And like I've said in previous videos this month, I'm an anachronism. I'm old-fashioned in many ways now. So, you know, you don't have to take my word for it. I'm just one voice in the wilderness. You don't have to necessarily agree with me. It doesn't make me right or you wrong. It just means we have a difference of opinion. But I would pick Ross. Oh, Regeneron STS top 300. Okay, so that must be some sort of award. Again, it just shows I'm not like privy to all the latest awards and honors. I'm sorry. I should know all of this. I know I should know all of it, but that sounds great and prestigious. Congratulations. And again, congratulations on getting into Yale. That's awesome. Is there any difference with interviewing in person versus virtually? And I had this question from a client last week. So are you my client? It doesn't look like your emoticon or your emoji is my client. So no. But no, I don't think it really is. As long as if they're offering you both an in-person or a virtual option, do what you feel more comfortable with. And the only other caveat would be it's just make sure you have a good internet connection. Like the person I told this to last week, she does not have a good internet connection where I typically talk to her. So in her case, I said just do it in person unless you can be sure you get a good internet connection. And in which case, like if it's if it's good for you, if they're offering both, they don't discriminate. If they're offering both, that means the person really is offering both. Out of curiosity, how common is it for colleges to audit applications? Well, was it this year or last year that Chinese student applied and claimed she was like a South Dakota resident or something and created a whole backstory around just to get in because she was applying from South Dakota, and they like escorted her off campus. Was that at Yale or was that at Harvard? I was really happy that they audited. I wish they did more audits. Get the IRS in there. Get more audits of applications because there's a lot of fraud. I mean, so many of the people who are addicted to status and are also huge liars. So they will stop at they will stop at nothing to get what they want. So I can bet you a lot of money that there are a lot of kids sitting right now at Princeton and Harvard and Yale who definitely falsified elements of their application. And I think that's very sad. I am a moral, upstanding person, and I think that's not right. You should not cheat just to get what you want. I do not believe that the end justifies the means, but many people getting into top colleges in the United States do believe that. So I hope they audit more, but I don't think they audit nearly enough. But they occasionally audit, and as we saw in that case of that girl who claimed to be a South Dakota resident or whatever, and she was really just applying from like I forget where, China. And like what happened? Did she say like she had like a 40-year-old boyfriend or something? I don't remember the whole story, but it's in one of the student newspapers, like a huge write-up about what happened. I'm happy they audited her, but I think that was like an obvious case. She was being so brazen about just the lying. Most of the people who are lying to get into these colleges, unfortunately, are a little bit, unfortunately or fortunately, depending on your perspective, are a little more careful about it. And therefore, they may be flying under the radar. And I think that's a shame because, you would hope that people are actually what they purport to be when they get into these schools. All right. I'm sorry, but are there any good engineering schools with a decently high acceptance rate? I would argue Purdue is. Purdue is a decent acceptance rate. And also, here we go, back to Colorado. What about Colorado School of Mines? I love Colorado School of Mines. And I mean, even Boulder to some extent. But I mean, you know me, I love Colorado School of Mines. Let's all go to Colorado School of Mines together. That's what I want to do. Yes, Colorado School of Mines. Santa Clara still has a decent acceptance rate. I like Stevens. Like I've said in the past, I like Stevens Institute of Technology. And if you're really into automotive engineering, what about Kettering? What about Kettering? They all have decent acceptance rates. Again, obviously not all at the same level. Kettering is the highest acceptance rate, whereas of the ones I just mentioned, probably Santa Clara is the lowest. But again, I love Colorado School of Mines. Okay, you're just never going to get me off of Colorado School of Mines. I love it. I love it. All right, so don't be so sure about MIT deferred being game over experience. Yeah, so sometimes people get deferred and they get in later. What are your thoughts on Franklin and Marshall? Do they still have the Franklin and Marshall clothing brand in Europe? Did you guys hear about this? So years ago, someone like bought the rights to Franklin and Marshall in Europe. And it's like the equivalent of Abercrombie. It was, at least. I don't know if it even exists anymore. Let me look it up. Franklin and Marshall clothing brand. Does that still exist? Yes, it's an Italian sportswear brand established in 1999, specializing in vintage inspired American college apparel like hoodies, t-shirts, and jogging bottoms. Founded in Verona, the brand produces 90% of its clothing in Italy, focusing on casual, sporty chic styles that blend timeless design with modern trends. So again, just to be very clear, are we talking about Franklin and Marshall, the clothing brand? Or are we talking about Franklin and Marshall, the college? I think we're talking about Franklin and Marshall, the college. Is Franklin and Marshall still in business? The college is, but is the brand of clothing still in business? I think This is so interesting to me. Again, this is like taking the status element of college to the next degree. So let's back it up. Franklin and Marshall, the college, is it's in what Amish country. It's a nice little college. It's hard. It's actually some hard work there up in the college. It's like it's not an easy college once you're there. It's always got the reputation of being like a little harder to stay in than it is even to get in. It's never had the lowest acceptance rate. It's obviously more selective than Muhlenberg, but it's less stylistically attractive to the masses than a school like a Swarthmore or a Haverford or something like that. But I'm not against Franklin and Marshall. I think Franklin and Marshall is a lovely school. A lot of people are attracted to a lot of athletes, a lot of mid-Atlantic private school prep school type kids like F&M. It goes by F&M. There's nothing wrong with F&M. It's a nice school. It's a respectable school. But as you can imagine, I'm sure some people on this call right now, they never have heard of F&M, especially if they're on the West Coast. Franklin Marshall doesn't have the name recognition that you, unless you're in Italy, in which case you may know the clothing brand. But by the way, when they did have sort of their Abercrombie and Fitch style with Franklin Marshall clothing brand, I liked it. I think they've changed their brand. Do they? I'm going on their website right now. You've got me intrigued. There's a man in a little beanie on their website, and it looks like they've gone a little off the deep end. This style. Are they even in business anymore? Are they out of business? I don't even know anymore. But Franklin, no, it looks like their social media is like dead. So maybe they're not even in business anymore. But they definitely were riding the wave for a while. Yeah, I think they look like they're basically moribund. So probably F&M, the institution, is probably happy about that because they lost somehow. F&M was stupid. The institution was stupid enough to lose the rights to their own name in Europe. And then all of a sudden their brand got hijacked as a clothing brand that sort of built on like the sort of Abercrombie type style. It was very interesting. Abercrombie, when it used to be like a different style than it is even today. I mean, obviously Abercrombie is different now. Abercrombie. Did I answer your question? Do I like Abercrombie? No. Do I like Abercrombie Fitch? That's not the question. Do I like F&M? It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Case Western, RPI, WPI, to name a few. Those are good schools. Like, again, I think I just interrupted a crosstalk. I'm currently a sophomore and interested in engineering. Notre Dame would be my top choice. What type of extracurricular and academic profile should I be aiming for? A good one. And what that means is depth over breadth, quality over quantity. You want to show passion. You want to show focus. You don't want to spread yourself too thin. You want to, again, pursue authentic passions because you'll go further with them. You want to pursue originality and leadership, all those things, so that you can be as compelling as possible for a very selective school like Notre Dame. And then also think about how can you continue your passions over at Notre Dame in a way where you'll be able to maybe even convey that in your supplemental answer or two. All right. Yeah, you're not my client. Yeah. Regeneron is the top science research award. Yeah, I had a feeling. Okay. What next? I'm in Virginia. Would it be a good idea to go to community college, then get guaranteed admission to UVA or Virginia Tech for engineering? That's not a bad idea. There's also getting into UVA at Wise. Isn't that an option for you? Where sometimes I think they even guarantee admission to University of Virginia Charlottesville later. This is, I think, only an opportunity available to Virginia residents, but it's called University of Virginia at Wise. That's like their small Western Virginia campus. And I think they do guarantee admission still there from there as well. But if you prefer to just do it from a local community college and you feel like you have a good shot of getting into, again, a UVA is much easier to get in as a transfer student than it is as a first-year student. So depending on your budget, depending on your goals, that's not a bad idea. Both Virginia Tech and UVA are great institutions. And as a Virginia resident, you're lucky to be in the state that has such good institutions. I mean, they also, by the way, is also William and Mary in your state. And there's also other good publics, not as good as the ones I just mentioned, but there's James Madison, there's Christopher Newport. There's some other good schools in your Old Dominion. So Virginia actually has some really great schools of all different sizes and selectivity levels. And, Virginia is a nice place to be a resident because you don't have to leave and you have a lot of really good college options there. I got deferred EA round from Georgia Tech. What are they looking most for in students within the deferred pool? Well, not you probably, no offense. I mean, the fact is, if they didn't accept you EA, that's a really bad sign. Again, I'm not trying to be personal against you. I just want you to be realistic. Like, it's hard to get in off the deferral. It depends on obviously how many kids commit to them from the other rounds they've already had. So it's not impossible, but if you can write a letter of continued interest, I haven't had a situation where I've had to write one for Georgia Tech in recent years with my clients because they've all gotten in. Um, yeah, so I don't know if they even offer that opportunity at Georgia Tech. Some schools only give you the place to check a box, and in which case you just get thrown into the pool. But if you do have the opportunity to write a letter of continued interest, again, I would argue you should say, "I will attend if accepted." You remain my top choice in that letter of continued interest, and obviously share any updates in terms of strong grades. Have your counselor send your first semester or third quarter grades. And then any other extracurricular exploits you have accomplished since you first applied, you could also put that into your letter of continued interest if they accept it. Um, this is the benefit of not having to take on so many clients as I get older. I'm not constant. My fingers aren't in constantly every college, every cycle, which is actually good. Like, who wants to be everywhere all the time? I like to focus on fewer kids well. So, I really, I don't know the answer. Look to see whatever the deferred letter said. Do that. Like, follow the rules. If they let you write a letter of continued interest, do it. All right. I'm currently so no, I already did that one. My son is a junior and is interested in media and communications and business. He is an A student, class president with great extracurriculars. What schools do you recommend? Well, I still like Syracuse a lot for I believe it or not, I like Ithaca as well for media and communications. I like BU. It depends on what he wants to go into. Specifically, I obviously like University of Southern California, to some extent NYU. It obviously depends on what he wants out of the school, but those are some big names that come up often with media. Elon, believe it or not, too. Again, I mean, you may look at some of these schools and see their selectivity levels. They're not all as selective as others, but mixing it with business, again, I mean, some of the first ones that come to mind, Syracuse, USC, those would be ones that I would initially throw out there. Again, I don't know what his scores will be and other aspects of his resume, but those are a good place to start. Maybe BU also, and maybe NYU, like I said. All right, what else is there? I already did that one. I got deferred. I saw that one. Can you explain how EA benefits the schools? Does EA increase the students' odds of acceptance at all? So most schools it does, but at some schools it doesn't. Again, every school is a little different, but in most schools it does. Well, they just get to build their class a little earlier. They start to get deposits earlier, and so that allows them to be more selective regular. And that since the majority of their applicants will come in regular still, when they can become more selective regular, they can really reduce their overall acceptance rate. And remember, many rankings lists base their rankings off of what is this college's acceptance rate. So prestige goes up, perceived selectivity goes up. So that's why schools might use EA, and it's yield management, also revenue flow reasons to get the money in sooner, and just know for sure more kids are coming and not have a smaller window of time between May 1st and August 1st to compile that class. There's always a summer melt. So to just front end that, it does benefit the institutions from a process and revenue perspective. What is this? RWT, the question about UCLA asking for additional supplement essays. I believe it's a good sign. 2023, my daughter was asked for additional two and all got into UCLA. Okay, all good. Yeah, no, I mean, Berkeley in recent years has asked for a recommendation or two for my kids. But that more happens with international, I feel like, applicants. But yeah, all these UCs, they reserve the right to ask for sort of additional requirements later. This is another reason why you always got to make sure your kid is checking their portal, because often at times that information won't even come via email, will just come on the portal. So keep encouraging your student, or if you are a student, keep going into your admissions portal for every school that you are still pending at every week. Don't go weeks or months without checking that portal, because there could be important messages seeking more information from you. All right. What are your thoughts on Notre Dame engineering? I like it. My daughter got into Purdue as a Lilly Scholar, also got into Ohio State University. I'm assuming that's what it is, as opposed to Oklahoma State University, and is a Stamps Eminence candidate, and also Madison, Wisconsin. She wants to study mechanical engineering. We don't know how to choose. Oh, well, again, I mean, there's a lot of money involved here. So I would obviously create a little spreadsheet if I were you and look at the cost of attendance. What is it really going to cost on a year-to-year basis? And have you visited all the schools and decided, how does she feel on those campuses? With all other things being equal, also knowing what she wants to do afterward obviously should play a role. I don't know what state you're applying from or where she wants to be afterward, but all other things being equal, I mean, I do like Wisconsin a lot. I do. But try to visit them all and obviously the cost matters. Like if you're going to be paying so much more at Wisconsin than you would be at Purdue or Ohio State, then all of them are very respectable institutions. The good thing about engineering at a big public state university is that it's going to have a lot of resources. All of those are going to have amazing resources. All three of those have good resources in engineering. They all do. So it's not like she's going to be out in the boonies like with no resources at any of those three. So they're all nice options. So that's comforting. But beyond that, I would definitely visit. I mean, I personally like Wisconsin the best of those three. Again, here, the same student keeps asking, at worst, would 3 Bs and 3 As second semester senior year be permissible for Ivies? Permissible as in, well, again, they're not going to see your second semester grades unless we're dealing with a late waitlist situation. No one is going to pull your offer of admission because you're getting B's second semester of senior year. But if you want to run through the finish line and be the most competitive candidate for getting off a wait list, then third quarter grades do matter a lot. Fourth quarter and last semester grades don't really matter as much because most of the wait lists are usually done at those top schools by mid-June. Again, every year is different. And last year, obviously, they went deeper into the wait list. But yeah, I mean, it's never a great idea to start getting Bs when you could theoretically be on a wait list through June or July. But no one's going to rescind your offer because of Bs if you've already gotten an offer regular or earlier. What did you find Georgia Tech out of state? Did you find Georgia Tech out of state early action results predictive elsewhere for your clients? Child got into UVA and Georgia Tech, so fingers crossed for the state. So it's interesting you should say that because, I've been playing the odds with a handful of clients the last week or two about what these Georgia Tech, UVA, and UNC acceptances would mean for them. And, I was preparing for what sort of happened with UVA because I knew the lack of essay on the supplement was going to really cause what happened to happen. So I knew that was going to be more selective. So I will say, but with that said, Georgia Tech is really holding its own. I think it is predictive. Like if you're waiting on a lot of like Ivies for regular now, and you just got into UVA or UNC and Georgia Tech, I mean, you feel like the wind is at your back at this point, right? But if you got into only one of those or none of them, then that certainly does not bode well for regular decision at an Ivy League level school. But again, it all depends on what other schools you're waiting to hear from. The problem with Berkeley is that depending if it's in-state or out-of-state, they have other institutional priorities. So it's not that predictive for you with Berkeley because Berkeley, especially if you're out-of-state, that's pretty tough. And there's only one round of Berkeley. In-state, obviously, you're going to be in a better situation. But it also depends on the major. So, with all these schools. So it's hard to know for sure. But But if you just got into UVA and Georgia Tech, that's a very good sign from out of state because it was very hard to get in from out of state this year at both those institutions. So that's good. That is good. But it's a whole different animal from if you're applying now to a lot of Ivies regular. It doesn't necessarily mean anything. You could get completely blown out, or you could get into a handful of those Ivies. I have no idea. Sorry if I missed your answer to that earlier. Okay, again, I don't know if I'm just reading. It's hard to talk nonstop and read this. But look, we're all in this together. So I'm happy you're playing along and watching. Always enjoyed your videos. Oh, thank you. I enjoy you as well. Thank you so much for watching. Stamps at Ohio State University. If she lands, it would be fantastic, in my opinion, says someone. I've had a number of Stamps students in recent years. I think the ones that got Stamps last year were, was it NC State or Georgia or South Carolina? I forget. But Stamps is an amazing opportunity. You know, for those who don't know about Stamps, look into it because it's a great scholarship. What do you think about Caltech as they dramatically change policy? Well, I think they finally got their head back out of the sand. That's what I think. Ashley is a really nice person. She is nice. She's nice. But I was always very disagreeable with that decision to go test free. I was. And I stand by it. And I think the faculty, luckily, pushed back enough on Ashley and the people who approved of it initially. And so thankfully, things are back to the way I think they should be at Caltech. Let's just put it that way. But again, I have no animus toward anyone. I think they're all lovely people. And I'm hoping for the best for Caltech because I didn't like having to make that video a few years ago where I was basically saying it's over for Caltech for the foreseeable future, which it was. If they had kept the test blind, how can you do that as that type of institution? You just can't be a quantitative, scientific, strong, premier institution and be test blind. It does not square. The fact that Berkeley and UCSB and UCSD, they remain being test blind is a travesty to the UC system. It is all political. It is so sad. And even some of these dyed-in-the-wool Marxist professors there are getting a little antsy, let me tell you. It's just not, it's one thing to be test optional. It's a whole nother thing to be test free or test blind. And I am happy that is an experiment that is over at Caltech. And I hope it ends at some point in the UCs, because I'll be very happy to start recommending the UCs again. But I'm not recommending the UCs that much these days. Again, obviously in niche cases, I will for the right kid, particularly if they're not a good test taker. But I feel like guilty recommending a kid who's getting a 1550 on the SAT. It pains me to even think about a UC for him or her, because like that's so wrong. Why waste a kid like that? Why waste a kid like that on a UC when I know that kid's going to be in a classroom with a kid who might have gotten 1100 on the SAT? That's not fair to and either kid. It's not fair. And the UC system's doing it to itself. Look, that is their right. They have the right to do it, but I have the right to say that I just don't understand how it can continue. And those institutions remain truly premier higher education institutions. They, like I said, they are nice further education institutions right now, but they're not higher education institutions right now, in my opinion. Nope, they're not. Until they get rid of this test-free thing. They got to go back to at least test optional. But again, I think they're not going to. Again, maybe they will. We'll see. You know, it's very sad. We're in a situation where if Trump says black, the UCs and Gavin Newsom will say white. You know, so as long as Trump continues to sort of at least sound as though he's talking about merit or meritocracy, the powers that be in California will say, no, we have to continue the test blind. We have, if tomorrow Trump said, you know, I really don't believe in standardized testing, you can bet the next day Gavin Newsom and the chancellor of the UC system will be like, you know what? No, we really think testing makes sense now. That's not a way to run a country or an educational institution, by just doing the opposite of what your hated political enemy does. It doesn't make any sense. So people have to take a breath and realize that it is really messed up that an increasing number of kids in the UC system cannot do remedial math. All right. My son got into early action at USC, UNC, University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, all for computer science, but was deferred by Georgia Tech. Well, again, that's not so surprising. I mean, it's very hard to get in for computer science, Georgia Tech. Stats, GPA, 4.5, 12 APs, all with fives. Published author in AI research, started 2 companies, one acquired, waiting for 24 regular decisions. Oh my God. You really went hog wild on regular decisions. You obviously blew out the Common App and then some. Good luck. Good luck, ABC99D. Look, these schools have the right to reject your child. I mean, it sounds like you're an amazing student, but sometimes schools get a little intimidated by a kid and they think that, you know what, this kid's going to have a lot of offers. Their Georgia Tech essay wasn't that compelling. We'll pass on you. It doesn't mean your student is bad or didn't do a good job, but maybe it just wasn't such a unique essay. And so they just said, we're going to pass on you. And that's okay. I mean, look, you already have great options, as we see, UNC, Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, and USA, and these are great options. But yeah, I'm not surprised. It can happen. It can happen. It doesn't mean Georgia Tech is bad or evil or mean. It just means that I love Georgia Tech's essay question. I will say, I think that Georgia Tech's, if every college had Georgia Tech's supplemental essay question, I'd be so happy, because that's really what a kid should be forced to answer. They really should be. I really like their question. It's like, why do you want to study this major at Georgia Tech? I love it. I love it. And not enough colleges are even asking that question. As we see with UVA, you don't ask anything. They don't ask anything. So it just becomes a popularity contest in terms of the proclivities of Dean J and her team. Are there schools who claim to be need blind that actually aren't? Well, I would really hate that to be the case. I think I have said in previous videos, I'll say it again today. Waitlist time, all bets are off. But regular decision and earlier, it would be a really big scam to be running if they're really not need. Now, again, obviously, need blind for domestic applicants does not always translate to need blind for international. So always read the fine print. But if they say so, I hope you can trust them. Well, it's getting late. I'm getting old. I'm sorry. It's 9:34. I've been doing this for almost 2 hours. Yeah, I've been doing this for 2 hours and 2 minutes. I'm going to stop soon. You think the spread of students is still the case at UC Berkeley and UCLA? I know the UCSD campus is a joke regarding. No, it's definitely happening at all the UCs. Obviously the media picked up on what happened at UCSD, but no, it's happening everywhere. It's just not as well reported on. I've seen it with my own eyes, but if you talk to any people in the know in California, absolutely it's happening. Absolutely. And it's sad. I think it's very sad. Like, why would you torch your whole UC system like that? It's all political. It's again, it's for to make a political statement. And it was okay, fine. You're entitled to an experiment. You did the experiment. It's over. It's over. 2020 is over. Let's move on. Let's go back to actually assessing students based off of the one objective measure there was left. It may not have been a perfect objective measure, but it was the only objective measure. Grades earned in school are not objective enough. There's too much pressures on teachers and administrators. Grades are no longer enough of an objective measure. So the only thing left was the SAT or ACT, and the UCs refused to consider it. It just reinforces my sense that Georgia Tech is getting right there with the top schools. Yes, you should. That should get, yes. I am a big fan of Georgia Tech. I'm gonna remind myself when I get off this call to email my girl who just got into Georgia Tech and tell her of the statistic of the 8% acceptance rate, because that will put a extra spring in her step when she gets that email. And I like to build up my kids. There's no way 1,100 SAT kids are taking UCLA computer science classes, but your point is taken. Well, How do you know that? Like, I appreciate your opinion, but how do you know that? If the if UCLA is not looking at SAT scores, how do you know there are not kids in every major at UCLA that did not have horrible SAT scores? You don't know that. You don't. I say that respectfully. Do you think a 4.0 after 1 year of community college and a 1600 in the SAT will make it to U Chicago or an Ivy? It could, but again, you've got to still make the case on the application. You've got to still make a compelling essay case as to why you are transferring and what are you running toward and not just away from. You know, that's really key when you're doing a transfer application. I'm not a transfer consultant, so I want to just preface what I'm about to say with that. But what I will say is that when you're ever doing your transfer application, whether you're transferring from a community college or another 4-year college into hopefully an Ivy or a U Chicago type school, you got to make the case that you're not just running away from something. You have to make the case you're running towards something. And that means that you really have to create an essay that is compelling and proves that you've done your research and you can explain why that's a good fit for you. Keep up the great work, Mr. Meister. We appreciate the live videos. Blessings from Trinidad and Tobago. Again, nice to know that people are watching me in Trinidad and Tobago. Nice to see you. Hopefully, I'm assuming you're warm. I am literally freezing. It is so cold. I do have the heat on, but it's just so cold here. So maybe I should visit you in Trinidad and Tobago soon. Also, with 2 honors classes included, with one of them being math. Well, again, that doesn't hurt either. But again, no Ivy League school is going to accept you just based off your scores and a great GPA at a community college. They're going to have to be convinced through what you write. I got deferred from Georgia Tech and I'm international. What are they looking for in a deferred form? If they're giving you a deferred form, you watch this video again. I also did a video 2 years ago. It's all about letters of continued interest. You might want to watch that as well. Princeton is test optional just to admit legacies. Well, yes. And as I said in previous videos, a lot of people assume that the people who were benefiting most from test optional were minority, underrepresented. Am I back? I'm back. I don't know what happened. I'm back. I didn't lose power. Something happened. I guess it got too cold. I don't know where I got cut off. If you're still with me, I hope you didn't hang up on me. I went offline. There are gremlins in the system. I don't know. They're trying to take me out. I don't know. What was I saying at the time they cut me off? Oh, no. Yes. I was about to say something very controversial to the powers that be, which is, yes, it was not underrepresented minorities for whom test optional was most beneficial. It was the unimpressive grandchildren of alumni and legacies. But even Princeton is going back to test required, I think, next year, right? So that's going to leave isn't that going to leave just Columbia is the last Ivy League school that is test optional. I think that's what I remember saying. Isn't that what came out recently? Yeah. So that's the news that I'm sticking with, which is, yeah, it was a backdoor way to keep the legacies happy. The most important that you understand. I mean, there are plenty of legacies who deserve to get into these Ivy League schools. Don't get me wrong, but it was most protective of the unimpressive children of legacies. It's just a sick situation. You're absolutely right. Georgia Tech for international is 5.9%. It's crazy. Yeah. So yeah, Georgia Tech is tough. It's like if you get into Georgia Tech internationally, that's like winning like the brass ring. Like that is like a big prize. So I can understand. And again, that's another reason why I'm going to pump up my girl who just got into Georgia Tech. Not that she needs pumping up. She's got into a number of schools. She's really playing the field. But this is a student who's actually also debating right now between pulling or not pulling an ED2. So that will be interesting to see how that plays in her decision. As I remember, you mentioned at your previous live about University of Maryland. If you become a director of admissions at University of Maryland, what would you do? Oh my gosh, that's such a great question. Well, I would be like Donald Trump on The Apprentice. I would be saying you're fired quite a bit to a lot of people. You know, it's so funny. Donald Trump on The Apprentice was such a character because he's not even like that in reality. Like the number of people he could have or should have fired in both of his administrations, it's amazing. He's actually like a wimp. He does not fire people. But I, with that power in my hands, would start firing people. I really believe I would. Maryland is, it's like, as I said previously, it's like this sclerotic bureaucracy. Um, particularly the higher up you get in Maryland. It's like, it's like golden handcuffs for these people in terms of the people running it. So I would try to get some new blood. Let's just put it that way. And again, let me just make very clear. I will never see the inside of the admissions office at the University of Maryland, but it would be sort of a dream job because I really feel like University of Maryland College Park is underperforming. But no, someone like me who can never get hired at University of Maryland for so many different reasons. I could write a book about all the reasons why I would never even get an interview. Um, but but yes, one of the first things I would do is fire everyone, and then the second thing I would do is I would probably, uh, though obviously the people in Annapolis would try to make it illegal in the state of Maryland, but I would probably try to institute early decision. I would also actually have an essay question on the supplement as opposed to these crazy quick text questions about what your favorite thing from last Friday was. And also that diversity question, which I'm not a huge fan of either. I would also remove a lot of the duplicative questions on the supplement that makes it one of the ugliest supplements going. And I would make the essay question or two that I would ask a little bit more exciting, like bespoke for Maryland or major specific, so they could actually start judging people based off of the major more and not just off the generic stuff. So I would reform everything I could reform. I would knowing how North Carolina and Virginia UVA do it. I would probably try to bring it in line with that, so that within a few years, like I said, I could get it to the same. I know I could. Again, this would require leadership, which Maryland refuses to have. So that's why I will never have the opportunity to do this. But what I would do is I would get it at the same. I would get Maryland to be the same level of selectivity as UVA or University of North Carolina Chapel Hill within a few years. Absolutely, because I would also put it on the calendar where you maybe with similar with UVA, I'd have ED deadline maybe of October 15th, early action deadline of November 1st. So bring it in line with UVA. Put a question or two on the application to make the reviewers more cognizant of how much that student has done research into the actual program or school within Maryland they're applying to, whether it's the LEP, the limited enrollment program, or not. Ask more of the kid who's applying. That would transform within 4 years the quality of student getting in. And also, I mean, I would also make a recommendation to the General Assembly in Maryland to try to actually change the rules, believe it or not, where it became easier to get in from Maryland so that the students who are coming from out of state are similarly highly, successful students like the type of out of state kids who are going to UVA, UNC, and even maybe eventually schools like Texas. Like right now, it's so messed up in Maryland. It's actually harder in many ways to get into University of Maryland from Maryland than it is to get in from Long Island. And that's not right. And that's partially, of course, because the powers that be in Maryland see dollar signs from the applicants who are applying from New Jersey and Long Island. And they don't see the same dollar signs from the kid from Garrett County or the kid from Carroll County or the kid from Calvert County, Maryland. So I would also, as an admissions director over in Maryland, try to work with individuals in Annapolis to create the type of legislation that states like California, Michigan, Virginia, and North Carolina already have to sequester a certain number of seats and more seats, frankly, for the Maryland residents, which will then just ramp up the level of selectivity for out-of-state kids even more. You can see I've given this a lot of thought, which is a complete waste of my time because, like I said, I will never have that opportunity. And it's a shame because Maryland could benefit from real leadership. But Maryland, as a state, has not had a real leader in many years. And that's why Maryland is what it is. That's why I'm, like, all right. I got accepted into University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign out of state for electrical. Congratulations. Congratulations. What do you think the impact will be of the changes in student loans? More students off the wait list? Well, We'll see. I don't know. I mean, again, the economy, I think, look, a lot of people are going to start losing their jobs soon because of AI. I think colleges, we're at the cusp of colleges really having to change quite dramatically. I want to stay in this field for at least a few more years because I do believe we're on the precipice of great change in higher education because this cannot continue. You know, all these questions about is this college worth $90,000? In 5 years, who's going to have $90,000? Because so many $90,000 a year plus jobs are going to be eliminated because of AI. So it's going to be increasingly hard to justify feeding the beast of higher education bureaucracies when very few people are going to have the resources in the United States to pay for full pay tuition or even close to full pay tuition. Now, with that said, there will of course be children of, Saudi princes and stuff who will always want to come to the United States, and that will supplement for a time, and that is sort of like I said, like the Titanic sinking. That will keep the Titanic afloat for a time. But even that, there's not an unlimited number of international billionaires who are wanting to come to that many colleges in the United States. I mean, they'll come for the Ivies and MIT and the like, and maybe Northeastern here and there. But these public schools like Maryland's, even Virginia's and UNC's, there's not that much demand, and there's not enough demand to keep it going. So Vanderbilt, give me a break. So something's going to break soon. When I say soon, I don't know if it will be in the next 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, but if I can do this another 20 years, I got to believe there's going to be a dramatic shakeup at some point because it's just not sustainable. But this year with student loans, I don't think anything dramatic is going to happen this year with waitlists. I think the bigger issue was last year with waitlists, but that was that financial aid related? That was more because the FAFSA got messed up, right? Something happened with the FAFSA a year or two ago. And I think they're also still working out everything with the, reading of the applications and comporting with the law and such. But I don't think that much of a dramatic change will happen this year compared to last year. I don't believe so, but we'll see. I could be wrong. Friend's daughter got into a school that is $80,000 per year. They gave her $10,000 per year scholarship. Family can't pay the difference, so can she get the student loans for the rest? Well, that's the family has to determine if she can get loans. If they didn't apply for need-based aid, they probably can get a loan, but it won't be a subsidized loan at this point. So they should have applied for aid on the front end. I don't like that the best schools come the last for a regular decision. Well, that's your opinion. But yeah, some schools do wait quite a long time. I wish the UCs would have early action or early decision. That would also be something that would make me more prone to talk about them. As you know, Yale announced their but again, I would not classify the UCs any longer as the best schools any longer anyway. But as you now know, Yale announced their $200,000 free tuition promise following Johns Hopkins. Do you expect more colleges to follow this trend? I remember your previous video, you criticized Johns Hopkins. Well, I didn't criticize Johns Hopkins for doing it. I think it's actually great that they're doing it. What I said was, I don't think it's going to really change the composition of the class at Johns Hopkins unless Johns Hopkins changes their review process and also changes the culture on campus to attract different school kids. Now, Yale doing that, Yale it's a whole different animal than Hopkins. Yale, people hear Yale, they like fall down on their feet. They're going to kiss Yale's feet. Hopkins, obviously, in some circles gets that same reception, but it's a much less popular option than a Yale. So Yale, free tuition for families making less than $200,000 is a much different value proposition than a Hopkins doing it, because Hopkins just is not that much in demand, whereas Yale is in great demand. So again, I want to make very clear, I think it's great that colleges are trying to become as affordable as possible for as many people as possible. But why they're doing it is, of course, for very selfish motivations. And what they're trying to get out of it in all cases, of course, is they want greater numbers of applicants so they can create the classes they want to create. And they're entitled to do that as long as they're not breaking the law. Would you think it better to transfer before getting the associate if your aim is a bachelor's and MD, or wait to get the associate first? Oh, well, that's, again, I don't really advise on transfer admission, but what I would say is When you're ready and you feel like you're excited to switch to institutions is when you should switch. All right. And when you feel like you're the most competitive applicant. Hey, Craig, as usual, your rants after a couple hours are really fabulous. I know I'm going to have to probably like stop now because I don't want to get in trouble. I think it was a sign when I went offline for a few minutes ago that made I'm going to say something I shouldn't say. So I shouldn't say something. I should wrap it up at 2 hours and 20 minutes. So we're going to wrap up in just a minute or two. What do you think of my chances are of getting into Georgia Tech? Here are my stats. Class rank number 1, 1530 SAT, captain of water polo, 4-year varsity swim, water polo, 4.4 GPA, vice president. None of that matters to me at this point. Are you already deferred? Provoked Halo, are you already deferred? Because if you're already deferred, you have very low chance of getting in. But if you're young, if you're 11th grade or younger, that's a good start. But remember, you're going to have to write a really good Common App essay. You're going to have to write a really short supplemental essay for Georgia Tech. And hopefully your resume conveys deep passion into the area that you're going to be hopefully majoring in or pursuing at Georgia Tech. So while your stats put you in the game, they only put you in the game. Now you actually have to play it. And that's the application. I had a client earlier today. I was explaining it's not just about the analytical, raw, clinical achievements that you're going to bring on your application. So many guys in particular think it is. You have to think from the perspective, this is a touchy-feely process. And they're going to want to feel your passion and know that you can specifically speak to them on the supplement, if they have a supplement, and on the Common App essay, and communicate effectively and articulately in the resume if they give you the opportunity to upload a resume. In the case of a college that does, Georgia Tech doesn't allow a resume, but do they? No, they might on their supplement, but I don't think on the application portion they don't. But I don't think they even have. Emory allows it on the supplement, but not on the application. On the portal, but not the supplement. But even if you don't have a resume upload option, you have to be careful on the activities page to communicate articulately, use all your space wisely, so that you can convince them that you really are dotting your I's, crossing your T's, and being articulate about what it is you've achieved so that you can sell them on you. It's not just about the objective things you've accomplished. It's also about how you communicate about what you've accomplished that will ultimately convince them whether or not to accept you. I'm going to do one more question, and then I'm going to go. Do you think a new dean at Harvard College could impact on their admission policy or culture eventually? Eventually, yeah. But there's so many entrenched, powerful forces at Harvard that no one in the admissions office is really empowered to do anything. It is from a much higher pay grade or power position that the decisions are truly being made at Harvard. They're just following the rules. Fitzsimmons, they're just cogs in the machine, and they're holding everything together, and God, bearing a lot of skeletons while doing it. But ultimately, that is the decision that the board, the corporation, is ultimately in on. That that the power of Harvard is the status making and the power to grant admission to Harvard. So who they pick filters down into who society is currently picking for positions in very meaningful ways. So that's a really big. It's not just some random dean hire that's going to determine it at Harvard. It's being decided at a much higher level at Harvard because too much is at play. Because so goes Harvard, so goes American culture in many ways, or at least American intellectual culture. So they are going to be very jealously guarding that. So that's why you can get rid of Dean Gay or you can change the president. It doesn't matter. Very little changes. You can call it Gerber. You can call it Gay. It doesn't matter. The president is just a figurehead at Harvard. It is what is the whole machine behind the president and the deans and the corporation that really sets the tone, and the massive money coming in there that sets the tone for what Harvard's really going to do. All right. What do you think are underrated colleges that are good for engineering? I did a whole video on this. I have a whole article on admissions.blog about this, so definitely watch that. And I can't thank you guys enough for hanging tough for 2 hours and almost 25 minutes. Again, if you are interested in learning about whether or not you are or your student is on track for selective college admission in the United States of America, I encourage you to go to areyouontracktogetin.com. Again, that's areyouontracktogetin.com, at which you will complete a free 3-minute assessment. Your results will be emailed to you right away, and they will help you clarify whether or not you are or your student is on track for selective college admission in the United States of America. I should also say, if you'd like to work with me in a much more slow-paced, meaningful, and deep conversation setting, one-on-one throughout the entire college admissions process, or maybe just for part of it, go to my website, which is collegemeister.com. Oh my gosh, I'm getting a phone call. That's another sign I should definitely end this call. So I'm popular tonight. Someone's calling me up to say goodnight. So I'm going to take that call now. And I want to thank you again, guys, for watching. Until next time, stay safe, stay well, and most importantly, stay stress-free throughout the entire college admissions process. So long.